Ah, there's a button. That's better. I have to be careful not to get it too close to my face to get it caught in my beard. But today we're not talking about electric impacts, even though this thing's kind of cool and I've been test driving it out. Today we're talking about removing window tint from your vehicle. Now, I'm a fan of window tint. I've had it on a ton of cars, and I have attempted to install it, which I'll do never again because I don't have the patience for it. But when I got the R32, it had some of the worst window tint I've ever seen. But today I'm going to talk about 3 ways you guys can remove window tint from your car, a couple of tips, and some bonuses that I'll leave for the end. Way number 1, and probably the most popular way to remove window tint, is actually super easy, super basic, only requires a couple of things. You are going to need some glass cleaner. You are going to need some black plastic trash bags or some sort of equivalent to that. And you are going to need that big bright ball in the sky that we call the sun. The method here is actually very simple. Step 1 is going to be to saturate the glass on the tint side with glass cleaner. Next, we're going to take our black plastic bag and we're going to put it right over that wet window glass. So we're doing this on the inside, right over the window tint. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shut the door, let that bake in the sun for 20 or so minutes, depending on how bad it is, depending on how sunny it is, and depending on how warm it is. And I have seen window tint just peel off all in one nice pretty sheet. Need a little bit of cleanup and you're done. Unfortunately for me, this did not work very well at all. And the main reason I think this didn't work for me is that it was cold and windy. Now, if it's sunny but not warm enough out, you could probably supplement this with a heat gun, being very careful, of course. You don't want those extreme temperatures on your glass because you don't want it to break. Between the glass cleaner and the heat, you are going to actually warm the glue up, and a lot of times that's enough to make it soft so you can just pull the window tint off. This is also how the detail department at my old dealership would remove window tint. I really like this method because, well, it doesn't really involve much work, and when it works, it does work pretty well. Unfortunately, you do need to rely on the warmth from the sun in order to remove the tint. So if you're doing this in the garage or something like that, it ain't gonna happen. You'll have to supplement your own heat another way. So if I were gonna do it again, I'd probably try this method first. Next up is the manual labor way to do it. That's using glass cleaner, a window scraper, some heat, and possibly adhesive remover. This does take quite a bit amount of work of spray, scrape, spray, scrape. Depending on how bad the window tint is and how long it's been on there, this can take a long time or it can come off pretty easy. I've removed window tint this way as well, and it works, right? It does a good job, but it is a lot of tedious scrape, 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 scrape work that you have to do. And I did try this a number of different ways. I tried to make it so that we scraped it and soaked it and warmed it to pull it all off in one sheet. I put lines down the tint so that the adhesive remover would kind of settle in between the glass and the window tint. That seemed to work all right as well, but no matter which way I did it, even with a heat gun, whether it's this battery one or my plug-in one, it was a long, tedious process to scrape all of those bits and pieces off of the glass. This works really great for where the branding is printed on the bottom of the glass or that outer edge with all the little black dots on it. So I like this more for the final cleanup rather than the whole job. Now, if you are using the razor blade method, or really any method, we need to take extra special care on glass that has defrost lines on it. We don't want to risk damaging these defrost lines and then having to either make a repair or, in a worst case scenario, install new glass. Whenever moving that razor blade, you want to either not be on the defrost lines at all, or make sure you're running parallel to the defrost lines, meaning you want to go with the defrost lines and not up against them. Another good thing to use is a plastic razor blade instead of your standard metal one. You'll be much less likely to damage those defrost lines with plastic over metal. And it still does a pretty good job of removing those little bits of tint or glue. All right, number 3, the one I was really excited about, and that's using steam to soften that glue and get the tint nice and warm and hopefully just peel it off all in one sheet. You can get a really cheap garment steamer for $30 on Amazon. I have a little bit different setup, which is nice. This one runs like $100 or something like that. But either way, we're taking that steamer and we're going across the glass nice and slow, really warming that glass up, heating that glue up, and softening the glue so we can remove the tint. This way actually worked pretty well for me for the most part. I do think the key here is more steam and more time, not less. The only negative here is it did saturate the interior of the car, both up with the headliner from the steam going up, and as that cooled and condensed, saturated all the trim panels. Actually, it didn't work out too bad because it was a good way for me to clean everything since I had just gotten this car and there was some leftover yuck from previous owners. And I think that this is probably the best method on windows that have either heater elements or antenna elements because you're not running a scraper down it, risking breaking some of those contacts. Now, of all three of those ways I tried, I think steam worked the best for me. I've seen that black plastic bag work really well in other instances. I think this tint was just so bad that it was pulling sheets off and not actually getting in underneath the glue. The key, no matter which method you do though, is be patient, take your time. The more you take your time and apply that heat nice and slow, the easier that tint should be to peel off. Now, I got two extra methods that you might want to give a try, although you probably don't, at least on one of them. The first one is just simply throw something through the window, bust the window, and well, now you get a new window and you can just have it retinted. You don't gotta clean nothing. Great in theory, probably wouldn't recommend throwing a socket or a brick through your car window just to get the window tint off. The final way is my favorite way. It's one of those things that I think is worth every single penny based on how much time I spent trying to make this video for you guys and actually taking the tint off the car. And that's just pay the guy that's gonna tint your windows to remove the tint first. Our guy at the dealership used to charge like $100 to remove tint, and especially when he was putting new tint on. So I think that was worth every penny. I do plan to get the R32 retinted, and he'll probably have to go back in and clean a little bit of that old tint that I missed. I'm sure he's gonna hate me for that. In fact, that side that I did the plastic bag, I actually pulled the window glass out of the car in order to get all the little bits of window tint off. So the final thing I'll say is if you guys are gonna get window tinted, right? If you're gonna get your car's windows tinted, don't cheap out, get good quality tint. This is an area that if you can't afford the good stuff, I'd wait until you could. Don't put the cheap stuff on because it'll be a pain in the butt to install, pain in the butt to remove, and probably look like crap very, very soon. All right, so with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. Questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll put links to the stuff that I use down in the description. Oh, one other thing. Some people say use ammonia. Don't use ammonia. It stinks. It stunk up the garage for like 5 hours. You can use glass cleaner and that should work just fine. Or another adhesive remover. Just work in a well-ventilated area if you're using that. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Snapchat. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You guys want to see a review of this? Let me know in the comments. If I've already done it, I'll link the review as well.